at ya. At ya. Tell you what's master. Coming at ya. Coming at ya. Rhyme style disaster. Coming at ya. At ya. Tell you what's master.
All right, welcome to another episode of Cut the Bull. This is Wilfred Reilly, as always, as you probably suspected, looking at my face. I'm here today with my longtime co-host, Charles Love, as well as Brooks Crenshaw, integrating the screen, as we noted in the pre-show chatter. And today we're talking to a buddy, I think, of all three of ours, Kevin Jackson, who is kind of a Renaissance man. I mean, you can find him at the Kevin Jackson Network. But comes, like, I think all three of us from sort of a working class background, but has gone on to be a well-known business consultant, the author of 3 books, the creative force behind the film Bleeding Blue. He's working with us on the anti-DEI, really, consulting brand Unified Solutions America. So, Kevin Jackson, welcome to Cut the Bull.
Well, thank you. I gotta say, guys, first of all, these are 4 really stunning heads. I mean, I don't know if there's like something on the program you got to be bald, but it's just amazing that we're all bald and good-looking guys. So kudos for that get.
Well, if you were at all an athlete during the 80s or the 90s, I think a lot of guys just did this as the simple shit. You sometimes see Caucasian guys go with like the crew top, but the whole like men having styled hair thing seems to have come later, where people have mullets and all this.
And yeah. At this age, I think I look so much better bald, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Lots to talk about. I know you guys, we've been covering DEI for the longest time, and Brooks, I'm gonna leave you out of this part of the conversation, but as a black guy that was growing up, this kid, product of the 1960s, and watching this whole evolution of what's been happening, I'm pretty disgusted by it because I just feel like there's no challenge left. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, and I know many of you guys will have these same feelings, if we disagreed on anything that has to do with race and all the other issues related to DEI, we just slugged it out and then we became friends and we grew up, we ended up hanging out. We were boys and it didn't matter. I mean, I had white friends, Hispanic friends, and the only thing that mattered was that they were competent. I mean, whether you were playing baseball with them, football, basketball, all the different sports, it was, are you any good? And to see the world devolve to what we have here, it's crazy. There was a meme that I saw that said something like, let me find it real quick because I want to get it right, but it was from Japan, and it was something, let me pull it up here real quick. Something along the lines of, take me a second. If Japan taught us anything, is that nuclear bombs are less destructive than diversity. And I thought, wow, how profound. We dropped nukes on Japan. They've come back together, obviously a rather homogeneous society, but you go to that. I was just there with my family about 6 months ago, and you'd never know it. And here, we're in total disarray, not the conservative movement, but many people are in total disarray, and we're fighting for meritocracy and things like this. It just, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, and I have a question coming up that I'm going to flip to the panel, but one comment there, I think that's a good point. And when you look at Detroit, I'm from Chicago, as most of the viewers know, it's not just diversity in the sense of the ethnic groups fighting and that being allowed that caused that. It's sort of unregulated trash behavior is the phrase that comes to mind. Like at a certain point in the 1960s, we seem to have decided that things that are necessary but ugly can't be done because they're ugly. So if it means you're going to arrest more blacks than whites, or more Italians than Anglos, or more men than women, that indicates bias, and so you can't enforce the law. And so, I mean, in Detroit, I mean, that's one of those cities that became basically unlivable for the 3 or 4 years after, the Reverend King was shot. And there are books about this by everyone from William Julius Wilson to Tom Sowell. Like, parts of the city were on fire so regularly that you could see it every night. It was part of the landscape, and everybody who could got the fuck out. I mean, you had white flight, black flight. So the surrounding suburbs, Pontiac and all that, you can go to the Palace, Auburn Hills, watch a football game now, or a Pistons game. But I mean, like, all that is fine. So you have this external core that goes out almost to Ann Arbor. And then you have the inner city that's just totally failed. It looks kind of third world. It's like the giant black fist, literally, like, looking down over the empty buildings.
It literally looks like it's been nuked. And I remember seeing this picture of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, going back to the Japanese thing, and you would never know a bomb was ever dropped there. Go look in the inner cities, in any major inner city, it looks like a bomb has been dropped in the middle of it. Here's what bugs me the most, though. I was talking to one of my friends, and here I'm going to say this. If you're going to get anything that corrects, whether you're in a relationship, whether it's your spouse, a good friend, a business partner, here's what I'm going to tell you is the key to success. You better know them. And what I mean by that is I have to be able to speak the truth of you. If you got a cliffhanger hanging out of your nose and I can't say it and I let you walk around with it for 2.5 hours while we're talking to clients and I don't say, Will, get that out of your nose, then what it tells me is I don't know you. You don't have anything in your nose, Will.
And so check,
the problem in the Black community is we don't want to be known. And I'm speaking, you could go LGBT, you can go whatever, but I'm speaking as in the Black community. We don't want to be known. We do not want the truth to come out about us. And it in the 60s, in the 70s, certainly in the 60s and prior, we knew the truth. We knew all our dirt, and we were okay with saying, look, we got to be better. This needs to improve. Now we lie to ourselves. So we tell ourselves that culturally, we're just as good or whatever. I jokingly tell white people, if there's a freaking apocalypse, I'm going on the side with a Duke and land rockets backwards. Fuck you niggas. That's what I'm thinking, okay? I'm not going to be on the side of people that have our culture. Look at these videos of these heifers, what we call these chicken heads, fighting in the street, mad because they can't pay their bill with a SNAP card. You won't take my SNAP card for me to buy, my liquor or whatever it is. Fighting for no reason. And no account dudes that will go and lay down with these women and have babies and not give a crap. If we can't look at ourselves culturally and say, I don't accept this, then shame on us. And the problem is, when we do that, people get mad. The biggest thing I hear is, oh, kid, why you gonna go telling people about, Black people? I'm like, man, it's a secret? So to your point, all the crime that's going on, don't talk about it. In fact, don't even credit it. I was looking at the crime stats. They call crimes that Black people are committing. I looked at the crime blotters, white. Asians, ethnic Muslims, Arabs, white. They're transferring all this over to white to make whitey look like they're doing all the dirt. When in fact, there's all of us here on this call, on this particular broadcast, I don't know about y'all, but I can tell you this, I prefer to be around white culture. Now, there's white culture that I don't like. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm saying in general, I'm more comfortable around white culture. I go places, I forget I'm Black, just to be blunt, because they don't think about it. But when you go places, because if you go to blackety black, I call it blackety black places, you will know in a minute you're Black. It makes you get in touch with that inner Negro because you know where you are and you got to come hard and you got to be, a different thing. So again, we lie to ourselves. We front. We call it fronting. We front to each other and all these things that are a waste of time. We front. One of the things I've always said my whole life, I don't always agree with it, but I've said many times, it is such a waste of my life that I got 4 black belts because I got them because I said to myself, I'm never, ever going to get punked. Never. Now, I know kids that grow up, white kids, they have zero interest in learning how to box, learning martial arts, whatever. I couldn't wait to get in a dojo because I remember watching dudes get punked in the street. And I was like, but what a waste of time. I don't think Elon Musk was worried about that. I think he was worried about technology and being an innovator. But we lose all that innovation because we lie to ourselves.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And there's a whole conversation there actually about you kept focusing on culture there. And again, this isn't something that's genetic, inherent to people. It's not caused by racism. If you went to the Four Seasons in Lagos, Nigeria, you're not going to see people trying as hard as they can to act as ghetto as they can. And that's something I've very much noticed traveling on business and so on. You got a black pilot for, Air Caribbean. There's none of the antics and the bullshit. Whereas in Appalachia, where I live and Brooks lives, you see quite a lot of it. But it's been me talking to the guest mostly so far. As opposed to asking about Minnesota, we can come back to that and do our company later. But let's actually flip to the Caucasian member of the panel first. Brooks, what do you think about this? What do you think about?
Charles,
I thought you meant me.
Brooks. We don't
Okay.
see color around here. But no, actually,
I was strolling to the Whole Foods the other day, and it really occurred to me that
walking
those poor blacks.
Well, one thing that you said, Will, that
I wouldn't live near him now. I wouldn't live near him.
Well, you're right. So I was just thinking, Christy's out this episode, but Kevin has fully made up for the Christy Kelliness, right? The where I have to put my military bearing on and act like what is being said isn't being said, and I'm the white guy in the room, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go. So, but one thing that you said, Will, in this particular context, is that doing the hard thing or doing the difficult thing or the I forget exactly the wording, but nobody wants to do that anymore. And, from a military background and an international standpoint, I just did a video on this recently. One thing that we quit doing internationally is we quit enforcing the rules, right? We had good rules post-war, right? In that if you identify yourself as a combatant and you don't hide amongst the civilian population and you don't hide in civilian infrastructure and launch attacks from, say, a mosque, you're playing by the rules. And because you're playing by the rules, you must be afforded humane treatment under capture. And that's the carrot. But like implied in that is the stick, right? And the stick is, if you don't play by those rules, we cannot afford you humane treatment. And that's what we no longer have the stomach to do. And maybe we shouldn't, right? Maybe we just have evolved and we've gone to a place where we can't. But when you give the stick, or when you give the carrot to the rule follower and the rule breaker, what are you incentivizing, right? Put on the Tom Sowell hat, right? From incentive structure and barriers to bad behavior and perverse incentive, you are facilitating essentially Hamas, right? Hamas's strategy has been perfected because we are so squeamish and soft, we will not do the hard thing. And so,
but I think a lot of that, Brooks, was learned. I mean, one of the things I talk about is exporting things from the United States. People watch us for everything. Most people couldn't tell you who the president of Denmark is or who's running Hamas or who. I mean, for the most part, nobody cares. But we all know who the president of America is, right? We know it's Trump. We all know, we're watching what America does when we go into Venezuela or whatever. So what have we done culturally? And I've said this to mostly the Jews when I was approached by the Jewish consulate to go to Israel. And I said, when I travel, I see Thug Life t-shirts in Japan, in China, and around the world. And so from a Black cultural perspective, we are exporting what many would say is not the best of us. We don't export Thomas Sowell, we export Snoop. And so, I mean, if you ask me who's more well known, I guarantee you, I put on a Thomas Sowell shirt, nobody's gonna know who the hell he is, but they'll know who Snoop is. So we export that. And as America, under leftist administrations and this DEI generation, we export nonsense. We export all the things that are culturally not American. They're not about meritocracy. Go around the world. People see this country as the meritocracy. And so because we do that, and to your point, Brooks, we're just saying it's okay. So what do we have over here? You get rewarded for cheating. Going back to Minnesota, look at the Somalis. They come over here, IQ average 68. Somebody says, hey, get your kids declared autistic, cheat on Medicaid. An overwhelming number of them are on the welfare systems. I think that somebody said they cheat. There's 24 ways that this group has been defrauding the government. But they learn from the Blacks here in America. They learn use your race and use your culture. And in this case, their religion being Arab or Islam. So you can't talk about Islam. You can't talk about them being black. And even though this rampant fraud is going on, which makes everybody look bad, anybody of color. Now we can subdivide here because people know what a Somali looks like. So luckily, Charles and I and Will don't. None of us look like Somalians, but we are black, and so we get thrown into this same culture, if you will. And so, but it's okay. We have people defending it. We have people protesting this. We have people protesting. The crime that's going on in the black community, the level of crime we have is insane. But we don't want cops, right? So we do. If you go talk to blacks in these neighborhoods, they want cops, but you hear the narrative and you think we're anti-cop. We don't want it. So we propagate this bullshit, and then we expect, we've come to the conclusion that is black culture, and I resent it. It absolutely infuriates me because I want no part of that. I'm 100%, well, I'm actually 79% black according to my ancestry, but throw away that little white pieces of me. I grew up black. I know what it means to be black. And so I just reject that cultural side and all these things that DEI brings, where it's okay to be late. It's okay to be an asshole, right? It's okay to always fall back on the idea that I didn't accomplish something because there's a big conspiracy. There's a boogeyman behind me or something. I think it's ridiculous. And I think that until we quit lying, going back to what I said earlier, until we quit lying to ourselves, there's no change. That's why my approach is I embarrass people. People go, Charles is very different. Charles is academic. He wants to debate you, and so is Will. These guys want to, and they're brilliant at it. But I ultimately want to fight you. I ultimately want to get you so pissed off at me that you say, well, let's fight it out. Because I know where that's going to end up. You're going to end up hurt. So that's the way I look at it. And I challenge people. I challenge people of all colors. As we say, 8 to 80, blind, crippled, and crazy. You need to stop letting black folks in Somalis or whoever use this crutch that we've allowed to happen because of these leftist administrations that allow people to do this stuff.
One of the things that you said about, in terms of crime, like really what's happening is, if I'm going to caricature this, is a bunch of white soccer moms are taking up for the 1,100 murderers in Chicago with a population of 3 million, when the people that live around them would prefer the cops be there.
That's
well,
a great
I've said
point
it many
to bring
times.
In Charles here, Charles Love. Now, actually, one thing about Charles, you wrote a book, Race Crazy, as I recall, that gets into a lot of these questions. Kevin, actually, you wrote Race Pimpin'. And I have both at home. But you talk about this a little bit. Why there's this whole group of kind of altruistic, upper middle class white people that seem to go to bat for criminals and thugs much more than we do. How DEI affects the whole idea of rating people and performance, but blah blah blah. You guys know what's in your books. Charles Love, what do you think about what's been said so far? Where would you take this?
Well, Kevin has his unique way. He always gives me a hard time for my much
Being
more
nice.
subtle approach. But but
No,
it's
that's not true. Charles knows I actually credit him for the academic approach, and you as well, Will. I really do. I admire it because I got a big mouth.
Well, I'm kind of in between. Like a lot of my academic debates have been like, myself and the guy who founded the alt-right trading one-liners in front of, a panel of people shouting. So there's that continuum from, pleasant conversation over tea over to actual violence. I enjoyed the debate format, but yeah, but Charles, I think, is definitely the kindest of us in terms of that very skillfully. Like the thing you always say is like, I'll give my opponent their position at first, like spotting them a bishop, and I think there's a place for that, even if their opinion is, in my opinion, complete fucking nonsense. But Charles, what do you think?
No, it absolutely is. That's why I do it, because I find it's very entertaining to watch them bury themselves, right? Because they back themselves into a box they can't get out of. So I was like, okay, so what will happen if you do that? Let's give you your argument. Let's assume we do that. Then what? Oh, they're all still poor. Oh, who knew? I thought we were fixing the poverty. Maybe we're wrong. But so a lot of the things that are said, we all have our different approaches, but it's not wrong. One thing that I like to say only because it's not talked about as much anymore. And I've been wanting to have one of those pro-blacks on so we can talk about that, Will. It's the culture piece, right? Because I think that there's an exaggerated focus on what that is. I mean, I remember about a year ago, there was a big debate between a couple of black conservatives about it. And sat there and watched, Shamika and I watched them arguing about what black culture is, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, what it is, and none of them could really define it. And so when they say, well, define it, and they'll say stuff, and it was never really things that were black. It would be regional, or it would be poor, or it would be, so a poor white would be like, I do that too.
Well, Tom
right?
Sowell,
The
right?
South would be like,
Black
that's
rednecks, white liberals.
right. So it's like, and then you compound that is a lot of these people don't know history. So if you talk about like what happened when blacks started to make money, especially in the North, and they got affluent, but because they weren't close to whites, like in the South, it was weird, right? Everybody talks about the South. I'm scared to go to the South, it's racist. But in the South, you could be close to whites. You just couldn't get too uppity, right? And in the North, you can get as successful as you want, but you couldn't really get too close. So they kept you separate. So you can be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, and be the king of your neighborhood, but you couldn't really move in the white neighborhood. That's the whole reason the blacks have their own elite organization, right? The Jack and Jill thing, right? It's because I finally got the American dream. I fought my way up. I can be a doctor, a lawyer. I got a nice house, a nice money, but I can't live with. So I have nothing in common with these poor blacks, but I can't live with my fellow doctors and lawyers, right? So once, we integrated for what the good and the bad that came with that, who were the first to get the hell out of the neighborhood, right? Those upper middle class and wealthy blacks, like, so they're gone, right? So they never really felt like they were part of that community. They were forced to be in it. There were some things that obviously tie together if you're close, but those Jack and Jill families don't consider themselves to be the same. They consider themselves black, but they're not really the same. So now you fast forward decades, many people in the black community, even the people who talk like the white liberal women you were talking about, but they don't live day to day like that. So they talk social justice, right? But they live Martha's Vineyard, right? So they're the kind of people like you see on TV, the MSNBC anchors who are like, oh, we got to help the blacks, all this community, the country, we're still back. It's the same thing as it was in the 60s. It's so bad. And then they get in their, chauffeured ride and they go home and they go to summer homes and those kind of things. So they say the right things, but if they were at the picnic, quote unquote, they wouldn't even talk to their cousin. They'd be like, get away from me.
But Charles, let me say this. So I think, and you guys correct me if you feel like I'm wrong here, but I think what I think people see is the part of black culture. It's kind of like when you hear the news and you go, that news is fake, Oh, Ilhan Omar was attacked. No, she wasn't. Yeah, I know it was staged, but whatever. You can have your opinion about it, but that's what I think. But I look at the news and I go, the only part of black that gets spotlighted, it tends to be the negative parts of black culture. We are culturally, as diverse as any other culture. Mm-hmm. It's just that we get this piece that gets highlighted to such a degree. Point number 2. I think the feminization of men is the reason why these sorry ass leftist women have nothing better to do. There's not a leftist woman that has a real man. I'm going to be blunt. They don't have real men. They have eunuchs. They have male hyenas. And there's no male energy around any of those women. Look at a Bill Clinton. Look at Pelosi. Look at Debbie Wasserman. Name me your female leftist woman, and I'll show you a eunuch. I'll show you an Anthony Weiner, or somebody like that. So there's no male energy. So what these women do is they crave it. They crave something different. So they go out and they protest everything. They're doing what men would do. If there's a bump in the middle of the night, they get up to go see what's going on. They're the ones that, are locked and loaded, and the dude is like, oh, honey, go do it. So I think there's this emasculation of men. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to behave. So everything for them is a fight because they don't get a fight. A guy in your house, if he's a real man, I'm not saying we're brutes, But I'm saying we're gonna say, hey, no, not like that. My wife and I have discussions all the time. She's like, you need to do so and so. I'm like, I'll do it when I feel like it. I'm not doing stuff because I'm being told to do it. I'll do it in my own time. I'm gonna have my energy, and people are gonna know when they walk in. This is male energy, and it's not sexist for me to say it. Now I know a lot of people are gonna think that. So I think these women are so lost that everything becomes their cause. They don't care whether it's Abrego sex trafficking and beats his wife. Bring him back to America, and all these other yahoos out there that are committing crimes. Go get them. Why you put them in El Salvador? I mean, this is why they make shows like I Married a Dude in Prison and all this other crap. Because who else is going to do it?
Their attraction to radical Islamists, right? Like, I think there's some psychology there that's
it's the whole thing. Like, I didn't want to interrupt either of you guys, but like the Handmaid's Tale outfits where all these women show up with like zip down the back, like silk dresses from this bondage fantasy story, bluntly, that they obviously have and own. And like, you do have to wonder, like, what's the actual goal of this? Like, where do you wear this other than protest marches? But there's a serious point that I think Kevin was getting at under this that's worth shouting out, which is most people have desires for normal things in life. Like on the right, I'd say our scandals often involve large amounts of money and just like heterosexual sex with pretty women. But it's like if you're
there's a lot of Republicans that are on the DL.
Oh yeah, well the page boy, but that's a great point actually. But like the page boy shit too, that's more Republican than Democratic. Because on the right, whether you're a tough black guy or an evangelical Christian, whatever, you're not supposed to be gay. So if you are repressing that desire to be gay for 40 years, it's a lot more likely that's going to snap out and you're going to be the guy who's texting, the first year college men. I mean, they're on our side. We'll leave it there. But like the same thing applies to all people. Like you have these repressed desires for the things everyone wants, i.e. people are heterosexual or they're homosexual, that you're not supposed to want. And for like affluent white liberal females, like one thing would be dominant men. I mean, like 95% of women are sexual subs. Like we're all at a point where we can say that without taunting or being crude. It's just obviously true. Adult men as well, by the way, but women even more than men want people to care for, like something to give meaning to life. That's usually been a baby. It's been your firstborn daughter or your son. So if you're in a situation where you view it as anti-feminist to want like a strong daddy sort of guy that's going to say, no, like we're not doing that. What do I bring to the table since you're bringing, sexuality, domesticity, like 95% of the money? Like we're going to treat each other well, but there obviously are powers that I have as well. If you're not supposed to ever accept that, and if you want to be child-free until 40, I mean, that's pretty much the whole point. You're going to have to find somewhere else to project those very strong energies. And without being sexist,
I want to say,
stereotyping all women, I see that a lot.
Well, let me interrupt real quick and say this. Number one, if you look at these women that protest, these mostly white suburban leftist women, they're hideous. They're not attractive women. And so they can't get, I'm just saying, as a general rule, they're not attractive women.
It's the anger, Kevin. They were pretty before they got angry.
And it could be on it. And I'm not even trying to be funny. And I know Charles is to a degree. But then let's play a word game. Because here's what I will tell you. If I could say Hillary Clinton, and you can go, well, I think Bill is this. But Bill was still somewhat of a dude to some degree. But if I say Fonnie Willis bought her black lover. She bought that dude. He was very happy being subservient to her. Who do you think would date Tish James? Look at Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. Who's the dude in that relationship? I mean, being honest. I could go down the list. Show me any of these black women that get into their power structure, and I will show you the dude, and I will show you the black man who is subservient to her, and he's happy to be that. And so again, that energy has to go somewhere, because at the end of the day, to what Will was saying, if 95% of women have this attitude of being somewhat subservient to the guy, and certainly if they follow biblical context to certain degrees, and by the way, a man has to earn that. That's not just a given. You don't beat that into a woman. She has to want to give that to you. if they want that and they're not getting it, what do you think they do? They protest for everything. They protest for, we want to save this, do that, or whatever. And they don't care how mean, how evil the person is. They will protest to get somebody out of prison on death row who killed innocent kids, if that's the theme du jour. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that, again, it's one of these things that because of DEI and the feminist movement and all the other crap we put up with, we can't say that. Because if we say these things, people get upset. Oh, I was watching some show. It was Traders. And a guy made a comment that, I don't know if you guys know, but The Bachelor, the guy that won The Bachelor, it turned out to be gay. And so one of the guys, Michael Rappaport, said, well, one of us is really good at keeping secrets here. And everybody turned on Michael Rappaport for saying that. Well, he was right. This is a dude that he's 40 years old, 35 years old. He goes on The Bachelor supposedly to attract women, a wife, and he's a liar. And when somebody calls him out and says, you kept that secret for that length of time, they ostracize the other guy. Same thing happened with the first outwardly black, outwardly gay guy in basketball. I forget his name, but he dated a girl for 2 years, was engaged to be married to a girl for 2 years, and then comes out. And everybody's like, oh, Barack Obama, oh, we're so proud, it's so, what do they call it? You're so strong or whatever for coming out. Well, what about this woman that wasted 2 years of her life? Does anybody feel sympathy for her? So we've come to this conclusion where you can do stupid things, waste people's time, waste people's energy, do all this kind of stuff, and everybody's supposed to be okay with it. Well, I'm not. And I think part of the reason why I wanted to do something, use my skill set in management consulting, is to go back to companies and say, look, get rid of this nonsense. Nobody in a company cares if you're gay. They don't care if you're whatever. Give me your freak. Nobody cares if you can land a rocket backwards. They don't care. Because if you could be, what's that, Rachel Levine that worked for Biden, if she could land a rocket backwards, I'd be talking about her like you wouldn't believe. But she can't, because they're too busy worried about, oh, you need to use the right pronouns for me and you need to respect me for what my stupidity is. No, I don't. I don't have to do any of that.
Oh, right. Now, that's actually a good segue.
You did honor the pronouns there, by the way.
Yeah, he did say she. He did. Good job.
So Kevin is a gentleman. And there's a whole lot there that I think any of us could get into. Like, the one thing I'll say, a lot of this is a failure on the part of men. So it's very easy to rip on women. Like, what are these women doing out there? These damn women ruining our country, marching because their husbands won't satisfy them. Like, there's a lot that goes into that, which is the failure of men to train in the traditionally masculine skills. Porn plays a role. Like, when I surveyed on Did Bedrooms, a huge survey started on the internet, went to paper, like 30-40% of them now were initiated by men. That's unbelievable. And just on and on and on. Decline of traditional religion. Are you taking care of your kids? 70% of black kids, 40% of white kids, dad's not there. But all right.
Well,
the next question,
real quick, Will, to jump in. Yeah, I believe men are to blame here in part, but I think one of the things that most people don't look at is the last 20 years, right? From 2020 or from 2001 to 2021, right? You had the most competent men in the context you're referring, right? Dominant, protective, capable, competent men were fighting a war for 20 years. So they were off, right? This is kind of Prince John, King Richard is off fighting the Crusades, and Prince John is running mischievously or on the countryside. Like that is an aspect of what happened with regard to.
You think we didn't look. It isn't like we ran through all of our men.
No, they were occupied. They were preoccupied with.
Well, there was a subset of men that were, but there were still good examples. I think it was leadership. If you look at that time frame, George Bush was Mr. Passionate Conservative. Bill Clinton was cuckold. Barack Obama was a joke. I mean, to call this guy a dude, he's an embarrassment as a man. Now, there are people that are going to be mad at me for saying that, but I'm saying, if you ask me, Kevin, what is your depiction of a real man? I would never look at Barack Obama and go, now that dude right there, that's who he was. Michelle is closer to being a real man, and I'm not being
Larry
critical.
Sinclair would beg to differ.
Look,
that's
I've
a
talked to
guest
Larry.
we
I've
still
met
haven't
him.
booked. But I think that
Oh my gosh.
we actually were going to do a Larry Sinclair episode, and there were a number of ethical and scheduling problems, but he may pop up on the show. So at any rate,
I've met him twice, and he's a funny dude. And Larry's a truthful guy. I believe everything he said about his time with Barack. But all I'm saying is we still had role models for men. Back in the day, we had the Pattons, I mean, there's a list of men. I don't know who you guys grew up with, but I could name you. Sidney Poitier, to me, was an epitome of a black man of the time. And there are many others. Roscoe Lee, I think, what was his name? Roscoe Lee Brown. I love watching that dude act. He was a Shakespearean actor.
Yeah.
And many others. And so those are the guys that I looked at, and I sort of got this idea of what black men, and there were the tough guys, there was the Shaft, the guy, but then there was also these intellectuals. And so you saw the range. And I felt like during that period we had a range. Now we don't have, guys like us, we get threatened, we get, all kinds of stuff, get called all kinds of names and stuff. And to me,
I think
we
that
just
gets to the root of it, right? Like I think obviously, and this isn't really an I think. I mean, if you wanted male symbols from like the 1990s, you could go from Colin Powell to Michael Jordan to Tom Sowell at his peak. There are 10 or 15 just in the black category. Go across the NFL, go across the churches. The issue really is that in one sentence, the controlling group in like upper middle class society right now is sort of center left people that are promoting what I would call prey morality. Like the idea that the most important thing is empathy. All of this stuff like COVID, we should shut down the country because just one life is too many. And I think that's something that feminists, for example, tend to ignore is that most men, like when you're like men aren't brutes, most men like women and don't especially want people to die. So when people say things like asking me for sex 3 times on date night is rape, now most people recognize that's absurd in legal terms or whatever, but the response isn't shut up. It's okay, let's talk about this sympathetically. If you want to put that in a collegiate textbook, that's fine. The radical Marxist perspective on women's issues or dating is as valid as anyone else's. And I think because of that, we've seen a huge cultural shift very rapidly that almost everyone ignores. Like the idea that you could be in a gay polyamorous marriage and adopt kids would have polled at like 5% in 1998, like in a modern civilized time. Yeah. And I read an article about that the other day in the Times, right? I don't know if you guys looked at this, but like my girlfriend cheated on me and I yelled at her and now she's depressed. Do I have a duty to apologize? Where they talk through like all of these questions. It's been a rapid shift. Okay, before we move on to the USA topic, Charles, you haven't done as much talk in this episode. What any further questions for Kevin or just comments on all the prattle coming from me and the rest of the team?
I think Roscoe should have cut his hair.
All the real.
That's the only problem I had with Roscoe. He lived a little too long with the puffs on the side.
He did. He had the puffs on the side.
He held on to the puffs, but he was good. No, this has been a really good back and forth. I just I think I closed the loop on the culture thing by saying, because Kevin's response, I agree with. I did not disagree with that, but I just think because a lot of the people who talk about race, when we talk about the DEI thing, giving them their argument, we know it's mostly BS, but their claim is they're trying to right or wrong and or fix something, right? They want to improve the community. I just think the reason I look at the culture that way is that whether they have good intentions or not, you're not really going to fix it because there's not this quote unquote one culture anymore, right? So you're not going to fix because really, if you try to fix it, what are you going to do? You throw. They talk about the right and trickle down economics, but what they're going to do, they're going to have some programs that don't work, small little things around the edges for poor people, but everything else is going to be middle class and upper. I think we've had episodes about this, Will, where they say, well, blacks are being treated unfair. So let's give them an Academy Award, right? Let's give them another category. Let's nominate their movie, give their movie 17 nominations. Let's put somebody in the C-suites. That's not helping the black community. That's helping some already middle class black get middle classer. Is that a word? Probably not. But yeah, so that's the problem. That's what I'm like, even if you believe this nonsense that they're doing it to improve, they're not improving anything. And that's the reason why. And I don't even think they can if they want to. And I think that's the point that I think people need to understand. Maybe if
but
worded
to your
in a
point,
good way, that'll get them to understand they're wasting their efforts.
well, to your point, Charles, what happens is when you say, oh, well, and by the way, it's subjective at the Academy Awards, so I'll defer on that. But let's say all things being equal, and it really was
not
being
real
done.
quick. It's not subjective when you say the only way you can be allowed to be nominated is if you have these, certain number of blacks or you do all this other stuff. Because then,
No,
right,
no. Yeah,
right,
I'm making that point. I agree with you, and that's my
right.
point. Is the Academy is always sort of leaned white, and I can understand blacks going, look, man, like when Out of Africa beat The Color Purple, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I watched both of those movies, and The Color Purple was much better. Okay, so I do understand that, but here's the deal: all things being equal, if you go, well, we're going to open up a category for blacks because we want to make sure they win even when they may not necessarily need to win. We're going to have Harvard's black only graduation because we want to make sure that that these blacks feel special, when you should feel special graduating from Harvard with the whites. If you ask me, I don't need the black one.
Right.
So I could go down the list of things where they're placating us, and ask myself, what do I want that? And the short answer is no. I want to graduate with all the kids. I want to win an Academy Award even when you don't want to give my movie that, because it's going to mean something. There's a reason why Jack Johnson is going to be remembered forever, and Arthur Ashe and Jackie Robinson and Jesse Owens and many others. They didn't ask to be mediocre. They had to go in there and kick ass. And if you didn't kick ass, you were going to get ostracized, and you carried the entirety of the black community on your shoulders with everything that you did. And that was our mindset. When I was growing up, my grandmother would say this: you got to be twice as good as them white boys. She would always say that. And she wasn't being racist. She was drilling in me that you are not going to fail. There's no excuses. And I'm going to tell you, I'm glad she did. Now tell that to a kid today, and they'll probably file a lawsuit and try to get, lose custody. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants to take that responsibility on. I talk to my kids about, when I'm stopped by a cop, I'm the nicest guy in the world. Not for me. I'm already a nice guy. I'm doing it for the next black dude that gets stopped. When did we lose that?
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. That actually is a great point of segue. And again, there's an important theme there, which is neither of the things that your dad or mom can tell you is necessarily exactly true. But it's better to tell your son you have to be twice as good than we're going to give you an unfair advantage. I mean, of those two things,
Absolutely.
It's pretty obvious what's going to make you hustle harder in the gym, on the track, with the books. It's not even a question. And Kevin, I'm more.
But
with
are they
you on
telling
how
them that we're going to give you special treatment, or is it worse? Are they telling them what I say the corollary to you have to work twice as hard as we all got, when we were coming up? They tell them if you fail, it's not your fault.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's
You
an
should
alternative
try,
too.
but
Like,
if you fail,
you're
it's
never
because of
going to
white.
make it.
Right.
Did you guys see that? This wasn't really like an academic study. It was, I think, in the Washington Post, but it was Eric Kaufman, who's a guy most of us have talked to in business, social science. But like, he actually had people read Ibram Kendi. He had young black businessmen read Ibram Kendi and then report like a week later how much they sincerely felt that they could succeed. And it was like a negative, it was like a negative 10% impact. Like, if you just read this guy's book, that was like, behind every tree, there's a white man waiting to ruin you. As I walk up the escalator with
With
my
a
boy.
noose.
No, that's Ta-Nehisi Coates, sorry, but like, racist, they're trying to stop me, fist fights are everywhere. If you read this, there's a lingering effect for days that makes you less likely to be aggressive and thus to be successful in fields like sales. And this is a real thing. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But
let me say this to that.
okay.
Because I just saw this the other day, and you're an academic, so you and Brooks can look this up. But I heard that people who think positively, I mean, in other words, the brain is wired to think positively, it's like geometrically more successful because their brain is in that mode. That's why I've never been a cup is half empty person. I don't raise my kids that way. I tell them, look, you can achieve it. Whatever it is, you can do it. But you look at culturally what we say to young black kids, and you touched on it just a second ago, and Charles did as well. Woe is me. There's always a boogeyman. There's a guy behind the tree with a noose and some bleach and maybe a Subway sandwich, but it's always something, that's waiting to knock you down versus no matter what's behind that tree, you're going to defeat it. I'm telling you, so if you program yourself to feel that way and think that way, the likelihood of success improves geometrically, if not exponentially.
So we just had Daryl Davis on last week, and he talked about his experience and the fact that his first encounter with racism took him by surprise because his parents had never told him about it. And a lot of people criticized his parents for not telling him that. But like, the thing is, fear is the worst part of it, right? Fear of something before you encounter it is always worse than the actual encounter itself. And like Daryl always thought that his parents did him right because by the time that he actually encountered it, it wasn't that big of a deal. He was just confused about it, right? He just didn't know why.
Same thing happened to me. The very first time I had a racist incident, I was 13 years old on a bus in Brownwood, Texas. And our football team was getting ready to get off the bus, and I was laying with my head on the window, and I saw a little white kid with his mom walk by, and they said, the little boy said, look at the nigger. And I was looking like this.
You wanted to see him too, didn't you?
I wanted to see that nigger.
Where are these creatures? That's really funny.
And then it dawned on me that he was pointing to me. And I remember chuckling, like, I'll be doggone, he's talking about me. But that was it. And I probably told that story 5 times in my entire life because it had that much impact for exactly the reason of Daryl Davis telling, or what Brooks was saying, the fear of it, had it been like, oh, there's always people out there, I probably would have been afraid. Like, I'm not getting off this bus. They looking for niggas. But I just like chuckled, and I finally got off the bus and went and kicked their butts on the football field. That's just the way it was, man.
Yeah, and that's also a pretty healthy attitude to stuff at that level. Like, I mean, you could say almost anything like that. Like, if I were going to a black school, someone might be like that light-skinned MF, like that fat guy on the O-line. Who cares? Yeah, just go out and play ball. All right, but now, one of the things that we obviously wanted to talk about during this episode, Kevin, in fact, everyone on this panel is part of Unified Solutions America, a new company that we're founding, we're putting together. Charles is actually a member of the advisory board. The three of us, Brooks, myself, and Kevin, in legal terms, are the initial founders of the company. And the whole idea here is pretty much anti-DEI consulting, where people with a business background go into companies and kind of rip out the stuff that hasn't been working. The Ibram Kendi bullshit that's been poured down everyone's throats at the cost of, not that I'm jealous at all here, but $67,000 an hour for a 1 to 2 hour speech here. So I guess I'll actually open with a broad question before we talk briefly about what you guys want the company to do. Do you think, Kevin, that peak woke has passed? And for that matter, chip in for the other guys. Like, do you think we're at the top of the mountain, or is this like a recurring cyclical thing?
We're at the top, but it's plateauing. It's not like hit the peak and go back down. We're pretty much at the top, but it's going to plateau for a while.
Yeah, I agree with Charles on it. I think to answer the question succinctly, I do believe it's peaked, and I do believe it's starting downhill. But they're going to be the people that have bought into it, and they believe it. I mean, it's dyed in the wool with them. So the management teams are now, I think, quite frankly, they're happy to have permission to finally address this. They haven't been able to do it. And it's going to take a company like ours to say, you have permission, we're going to give you the empirical data and show you that you've wasted billions of dollars and collectively trillions over nothing. And you have a lot of expertise in your company that you need to pull out, but don't do it in such a way that people feel like they can't be true to who they are and true to the company's mission. Look, Brooks has worked with teams. I've worked with them in a different capacity. I'm talking about special forces. And the one thing that unites the teams is the mission. And we, you know, in the old days when you were building a company, you did your mission and your vision and you worked to it. Now they do it, it becomes, well, we want to be sustainable and we want to be, you know, and they got all these buzzwords that has nothing to do with the true mission of the company, which is, you know, whatever it is, we make the best product, we want to change lives, whatever. Ask us what our mission is at USA. Our mission is we want to make your company better. We want to find the true value inside of your company, and we want to elicit it out of every single employee. And we don't care what their color and all the other things are. Does not matter. If whatever you bring brings value to the company, our job is to find it and bring it out of you. The same thing I would say to academia. What is your job? Your job isn't to teach kids reading, writing, and arithmetic. Your job is to find the genius that I believe exists in every single human being on this planet. And so if it's a company, every single human being in your company has genius to bring to the party. And if you can't find it, shame on you. That's why you bring us in, because we will find that genius and point it in the right direction. And it won't be driven by individual ideology, all the nonsense that you've been trapped into. If you ask me, what's our mission at USA, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yep. Now, we've already talked in some past episodes about the exact things that we plan on doing. I mean, with people like Michael Young, local distance, with AI tools that we're extremely skilled with without false modesty, going through corporate records and praxis and seeing where this stuff has hit your business, how pregnant you are with DEI, as Kevin has put it. And from there, removing that. I mean, we're capable of putting on panels, events, retreats, day-long sessions with people from, again, Mel Chin to Charles Love himself to me, for that matter, that can actually unpack the roots of what we saw as an attempted cultural revolution in society and pull them out of the ground. And then thirdly, we can replace that with some alternative methodologies that are based on extreme cultural competence from the elite end of, for example, military operations. That's where Brooks and some of the advisors come in. So we've already talked about a lot of that. But Brooks, I guess one question that relates to what Kevin said and what I just said there, you were, I think, the guy that told me the phrase, like, the left-wing ratchet never goes back.
Right.
Like, what does that mean in the context of woke?
Well, so I want to answer that question. You know, the is peak woke over? I believe it's going to be dependent on our efforts and the efforts of multiple entities out there that are trying to combat it, right? Because from an Intel guy perspective, I'm looking at the history of these movements, and they start long before, right? And these have been waves and ebbs. And so we had the long march through we had the attempted Marxist revolution. It failed. Then we had the long march through the institution. And once they had taken hold of academia, we saw the rise of political correctness in the 90s, which is a Soviet concept, but it's basically to enforce, right think and right speech, and to, censor wrong think and wrong speech. And, that was a peak, and then it got pushed back against. And then by 2012, 2013, you ended up with the woke rise, which is woke is just slang for critical consciousness. This is critical theory based ideology, and DEI and ESG are praxis of the critical theory. So this movement has been advancing and holding, and advancing and holding, and advancing and holding. So to think that this time they're holding is the end is naive. And it doesn't look at history properly, right? What we're doing is strategically rolling this company out and putting a lot of the initial raise in the hands of everyday Americans, because We understand that the market is waiting and watching, right? They say they've done away with DEI. What they've really done is they're reshuffling, they're changing titles and changing roles and calling it belonging or inclusiveness and yada, yada, because they're not really sure if this is a short-lived storm that they will then just go back to business as usual, or if the market really wants a reversal on this. We are inviting the average American to invest with us to signal that the market wants this gone, right? So people talk about it. We're inviting people to act. We're inviting people to actually make their voice heard. 5 smooth stones, David and Goliath. And in success, when the market signal is achieved, those companies have no choice but to act. And who are they going to act with? Are they going to act with McKinsey, who gave them DEI? Are they going to act with Deloitte? We are purpose built for this, and we understand the source code of critical theory and DEI, and we can pull it out completely because we understand what it really is.
I think that is an absolutely brilliant way to describe it. And what I would say is this, in terms of the raise, is we've relied on the C-levels to do the right thing, and they didn't. And you look at these people that have been empowered, and they're brilliant thinkers, but they went that way. Now, was it the consultants that did it? Some would argue yes. They were the ones who said, look, this is the way to go. But if you look at how we're doing our raise, we're doing it from the grassroots. I mean, these are small investors who are working at these companies and who are witnessing this, and they become victims of it in many cases. And I think that with what the Trump administration is doing from the push down by getting rid of all this, at least at the federal level, and putting pressure on the states to do the same, us with this push up, from the bottom up, where you get hundreds of thousands of small investors who say, I'm willing to put a little piece in the game here. I think that to Brooks's point, they're stopping and waiting, but normally it's to continue to push forward. I think the stopping and waiting here is actually they're going to find themselves being pushed backwards, because I think that the appetite for what's been happening is beginning to dwindle. I think the average American is more than willing. They've elected a black president. They've considered women presidents. They're more than willing to look at the right candidates for the right job. So I think that we're finally at a point where people are willing to say, you know what, I'm no longer going to apologize for being white. I'm no longer going to apologize for living life in what my definition of normal is. Whatever you decide is your normal is okay with you. So I think we're finally at a point where these things are being addressed, and people are saying, I've had enough. So I think that I'm very confident that USA will be one of the leaders in pushing this back. And you guys know my tagline is, we're not the ones who got you into this mess. They are. So if you want a consultant that's going to come in and look at meritocracy, and as I said earlier, draw out the best of your employees. I would love to have a conversation with an employee and say, what are you about? It's like a dating question. What are you about? Oh, I like walks in the park and I like great food. Who doesn't? Okay, but who are you? And what do you really stand for? Ask a person that. I tell people the two best days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out what you were born to do. Do you know the second one? Because you know the first one, but I doubt you know the second one. Has anybody ever asked you that question? Are you truly giving the best of yourself in this particular thing? And if the answer is, I don't know, then how about we find out? How about we put you in something where you fit? And go to any corporation, you'll find people, misfits all over the place, because somebody goes, well, I got a degree in this, I got a degree, and they put them there and they're no good at it. And somebody comes along and Amadeus is their Salieri because they paid attention. They know what they're doing. That's what our job is at USA, is to help companies find the Amadeuses in every role where we're asked to do that, and put those people in positions where they can be successful, because that's ultimately what will get rid of DEI. If I'm happy doing a job I love to do, I don't care who I work with. I don't care who I work for. If I'm happy doing a job I love to do, I'm not even working.
Yep. And what you see, at least in my experience, when you look at genuinely elite teams that are picked on merit, from varsity football to the U.S. Army to our first meeting for USA, you tend to see a lot of diversity just naturally occurring. I mean, it was like even our panel now, but the first USA meeting of the advisors and consultants and so on was far more so. We had people ranging from Mel Chin, who's from Singapore, to Frank McCormick, who's a casual buddy of mine, who's an Irishman from Chicago. And that tends to be what you get when you just let people compete. The issue is that it's not exactly proportional, right? Like, you don't necessarily get 10 blacks and 70 whites and 18.2 Hispanics, half of whom speak fluent English and so on. So we're comfortable with that.
You can't have that if people are allowed to follow their interests, right? You can't have that because people will choose different men and women will choose different careers based on their interest, right? This is the classroom, right? The competitive pool is the middle step, right? It's not going to look like 13% black, 52% white. But if you look at the competitive pool, in college football, the cornerback position is 90% black. The NFL is going to reflect that. Cool, right? 90% male engineers in aerospace engineering. You're going to have that. That's what the competitive pool looks like, because only 10% women go into from the educational pipeline through the industry, right? Because they're following their interests. So the question is equal representation according to general demography or individual autonomy and freedom. Those are your two choices.
First idiotic thing is actually the rule in American law, which is something I think a lot of people forget. Okay, Kevin, did you have a comment there?
I was just going to say that when you look at sports, so you got the cornerback position that's predominantly black, you got the quarterback position that's usually white. And, of course, that's been racialized over the years, as is coaching and all the other stuff. But at the end of the day, here's what I will guarantee you. Take a big city, give them a winning team, and they don't give a crap who's on the team. It could be all Chinese. If they win the Super Bowl, then your team's going to suck and you're going to be excited. Now, you may dissect it a bit and go, it's really strange that it's so many Asians that are playing on the football team, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if you're winning, nobody cares. White, black, or whatever. Now, Charles's buddy, Jason Whitlock, did a thing on black quarterbacks, and it was a horrible year for black quarterbacks. I heard Jason do his thing on it. And but everybody's doing DEI in quarterbacks, and the teams are losing. So how about you just get the best quarterback or the best cornerback or whatever? Isn't that what sports was supposed to be about? Meritocracy and many other things. So that's what we're about in terms of USA. That's why I signed up to be a part of this and wanted guys like Charles involved and many others that we've got on the advisory board and some of our consultants, because we all want the best thing for the individual and to bring out the best of that individual in that company and for the mission of the company. And I think that, as simple as that sounds, that's what people have gone away from. And sadly, that's why we're in the state that we're in.
Beautiful. Now, we've all done a fair amount of talking. I think we can actually pass through our words of wisdom today, unless anyone feels passionately about theirs. Charles Love, you're going to do the last word. Take us out of here. What are your thoughts on woke, USA, if you want, anything discussed?
Wow, you're leaving it all to me. You left me speechless. I think I'll
say some kind of prattle at the end, so you'll look good.
Yeah, but I think that all that needed to be said has been said. I think that what we're talking about is this basic common sense thing. It's just a matter of whether people can be honest with themselves.
That's actually an extremely good concluding point. Can we admit that the business of a shoe company is selling shoes? And the more time you spend on diversity and sustainability and protecting exotic lichens in the Arctic, the more time and shareholder money you're wasting. Charles Love bringing it to you with some wisdom. For the panel, which is Brooks Crenshaw, Kevin Jackson visiting us today, and the OG Charles Love, I'm Will Reilly. Thanks for watching.
Country to say, Patriot J, I'm saving the day. Patriot J, I'm saving the day from you commies who lame. No, you can't fuck with me. I got a country to say, God bless. as the US of A, land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to save, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.